right, this video is for our body weight only. This is workout routine number 2. What I would suggest is if you're going to this video is make sure you do the first one, or at least watch the first video first, because there's a lot of overlap between the two, and for the sake of time and redundancy, I'm not going to go back through every single thing I hit on the first video. So watch the first video, even maybe do the first routine first, and then watch this one and try this one afterwards, okay? So similar idea. We're warmed up. We got our whole setup going here. We're ready to rock and roll. Now we're going to go through our 9 exercises. Just like before, we're starting with our core, and then we're alternating for the next 8 between upper and lower body. Really, there's just a little bit of variation, right? We still have our pull-ups and our push-ups. Maybe we're working in some variety there, but we wanted to give a couple different exercises, so we were getting a little bit of variety with the 2 workouts. And if things are looking like they're going well and we're getting good feedback on this, we will probably even create more so you guys can try different routines. So my first thing it's different, is we have our side planks, right? So I'm starting with my core. Remember, for our side plank, all right, I know, no more hovers, right? The key is I need to have my body in a proper alignment, a proper position. And I accomplish that by really doing 2 major things. First one is squeezing my bottom butt cheek. That's gonna keep my hips from sagging, right? So it's not just keeping my hips in this alignment, it's also squeezing that butt cheek to engage my lower back muscles, which is really important, especially for those of us that might have low back issues. From here, I need to make sure that my top shoulders pull back. And I can accomplish that by raising my hand straight up to the sky. You don't have to keep it up there. Some of us like to prop it on our hip then, that's fine. But if we feel like we're slouching forward, reaching straight up with those fingertips can be a good solution. So once I have that position, I'm just gonna hold it for whatever count, 30, 45 seconds. Again, you're gonna do each side, and think of it like I mentioned in the first video, like a continuation of our warm-up. I wouldn't go super crazy and try to hold that for a minute or 2 minutes, right? It's like a kickoff for the circuit. Now I'm going to start going into my upper and lower body alternating. We're going to go over here to our reverse push-ups. Talked about this before. Just make sure whatever setup we have, we're being safe. If we need to make it easier, we raise this up or slide our feet closer to our butt. One variation I'll show you here to make it a little bit harder, I didn't mention in the first video, is using a single arm, right? So if I'm gonna do that, I wanna make sure it's closer to the midline of my body before I squeeze up, okay? So if we were normally in the weight room, we were hanging from our TRX straps, we just say release, and we're gonna keep our hand in this position. Because we're using probably unconventional setups, to be safer, I would slide your hand more to the middle, so it's more in the midline of your chest, okay? But same idea, and whatever reps you're doing, do all one arm and then the other. So now we're gonna go to our lower body. One of the other differences is we're gonna do lunges. So if you remember, this is where our single leg squats appeared last time. So for our lunges, the key to a good lunge is we don't pause in the middle. So 1 rep, and we're gonna try to do all one side then the other. So I'm gonna work all my right side or all my left side before I'm not gonna be alternating, right? Is to not pause in the middle. So when I do this, I wanna have that good marching motion where I'm stepping forward, bringing my knee up, and then I'm cycling my heel towards my butt as I'm going back and forth, right? So when I step forward, I'm in that nice little lunge position. From here, I want to drive all the way up and through. And if you notice, my heel, I'll go from this side, is coming to my butt, right? And that's going to help kind of groove that running form. You'll also see me doing opposite arm, opposite leg. So the big mistake when I see people do this is they pause in the middle, right? They want to do that gather step. What we tell our little kids at our camps is, imagine there's a puddle right here. We don't want to step in the puddle and get our feet all wet, right? So we're here, we're going to step all the way up and through. So the ways to make this harder is to either increase our reps or increase our tempo, right? Go a little bit faster. So just like I mentioned earlier, do all one side and then the other for that. Now we're going to start to get back to our upper body with our push-ups. So I'm not going to go back through all the push-up explanation. Just what I would say is give yourself some variety if you can, right? If you really need to stick with the regular push-ups that you did in the first time, if we're still trying to make progress on that, right, do that. But just make sure that as we start to fatigue, that we're keeping our elbows tracking our ribs, right? So a common mistake, especially when we're doing a lot of reps or something to very heavy fatigue or failure like you are for these circuits, is as we get to those higher reps and we fatigue, we start to let our elbows flare away, or we start to only go halfway up. So make sure that we're keeping that good form. My hands are underneath my chest, right? My elbows are tracking the sides of my ribs, and I'm extending all the way up and all the way down. Okay. Now we're gonna get back to a lower body exercise. So I'm gonna stay right here for our single leg hip raises, okay? So when I do these single leg hip raises. Normally when we do our hip raises, our feet are about shoulder width. What I would say is I would move that 1 foot closer to your midline, okay? The reason being is we don't want to put a ton of torque on that knee. And if we're a lot wider, supporting our body weight on that single leg might torque a little bit, right? So I'm just gonna bring that foot a little bit closer to my midline, and then I'm extending up by squeezing my butt. How do we make this harder? This opposite leg we can hold extended. So I'm engaging that quad, my lower abdominal muscles, and I'm extending up and down. For this, make sure we're squeezing. You want to think about squeezing your butt cheek, not thrusting or extending your hips. And for that one, again, all one leg and the other. Another thing is just increasing or decreasing reps to make it that harder or easier. Okay, our next one is our pull-ups. Demoed that earlier. Just want to reiterate is no matter what you have access to, if you have access to it, be safe. And remember, we can always go with the alternative of hanging from our reverse push-up position with our hips sagging to hit more lat as a replacement or alternative if we can't do pull-ups or we just don't have access to an area to attempt it. Okay, next, working down the sheet, we have our speed skates. This is another new one. So similar to our split squat jumps, these speed skates are a plyometric exercise. They appear in that same spot again later on in the workout, so we can kind of push on these, not worry about sucking our cardio too much. So with our speed skates, we're gonna get in what's called the skate position. So what is that? If you ever watch the Olympic speed skaters, they're on a bended knee in this position, okay, and they're crouched nice and low. So from there, what we're gonna try to do is explode dynamically to our side, right? So I'm jumping similar to my side lunges, directly to my right and then back to my left. What I would say initially is you haven't done these before or you didn't need to do the more novice approach is do a single one. I'm gonna demo that first, but really they're meant to be done rapid fire. What does that mean? That means I have low ground time. It's almost like you're landing on hot coals. So we're greedy. We want to do it fast, but still get distance, right? We don't just want to switch our feet back and forth, almost like we're doing a weird dance, right? We want to actually jump, get off the ground, okay? So again, I'm in this position. To start, I'm gonna, as I jump and drive off that down leg, I'm gonna throw my arms across my body, and as I land over here, I'm gonna let that trail leg swing behind me. So I finish essentially in a mirror position to how I start, right? So again, I'm gonna be over here. I'm gonna start with our paused or our single or more simpler version. I'm gonna jump to my side, stick and land low. Jump to my side, stick and land low. Just like that, okay? And if you need to do a little bit more of a pause the first time to learn the technique, that's no problem. But eventually, what we want to try to do is get where we're touching and going. As soon as we land, we're exploding to that next one, and that last one, we're landing nice and low. That's one where increasing our reps, increasing the amount of time we're going, you can hear it in my lungs right now, is an easy way to make it harder. And then that leads us into our last push-up exercise. So again, like we mentioned, if you can, add variety. This is the second time it appears on the circuit, just like it did in the first routine. Try to give variety if you can and really challenge yourself, especially in that third round. Really try to go to failure. Then we're gonna finish with before we get to our core, with our bent knee fire hydrants. Okay, so I like to think of this as a non-traditional core muscle exercise. So we're working a lot of lower back, a lot of glute, okay? And when we do this, we're not doing it for speed. This is more about control and good body position. So all I'm essentially gonna do is I'm gonna be on all fours. I want that belly button to face straight down the whole time. One side at a time. I'm gonna start with my right side. I'm gonna lift my leg up so it's completely parallel to the ground without rocking my hips or turning my belly button. So I'm not opening up, right? My belly button is straight down the whole time. I lift my leg straight up, come back down. Lift my leg and squeeze straight up and come down. So we should feel this into our obliques, into our glutes, okay? And then we'll do all one side and the other. For this one, simple as add more reps, right? Add or subtract reps as we need to. This is one that, especially if we experience with it, we could probably add more reps. We probably don't need to go the other way to make it easier, okay? And then for our core, the Russian twist, I would suggest, and I'll actually do them over here, highly suggest putting your feet on the wall. So when we do our Russian twists, normally, unless we have really good technique, we often put too much stress on the lower back. One way to help safeguard against that is to simply put your heels against the wall, right? So if I put my heels against the wall and then I perform the Russian twist, less likely to irritate my lower back, right? So once I'm in this position, my goal is to rotate and twist. I want to rotate my upper half. So I want, like if in the video, you should be able to read my t-shirt, and if we were on the other side, I'd twist, you should be able to read the t-shirt on this side. So a lot of times we do this, right? Just move our hands back and forth. This is not a Russian twist. We're not actually twisting, right? Instead, I want to fully rotate, fully rotate. Whether that means you touch your hands to the ground or not, doesn't necessarily matter, right? The big thing is bringing my shoulder to my chin and getting that full rotation back and forth at that angle back, okay? And then my last one, this is a new one for you guys, are rolling V-sits. Let me do this from this angle. This one I put at the end to challenge us. I also like to put it in because it involves a little bit of flexibility and mobility, and it's a more of a fluid motion, right? And I think it'll be a nice thing to finish to challenge you guys a little bit. So when I do this, I'm gonna start by rocking back, and as I roll back onto my butt, at the same time, what I'm trying to do is extend my legs straight and touch my fingertips to the ground, right? So I'm gonna roll back, come up to my butt, extend, touch, and I'm gonna keep doing that in a fluid motion, one rep into the next, okay? So for, again, tight hamstring crowd, this is a good one to try to chip away at some of that flexibility, right? But for that one, that might be a challenge for a lot of us that we haven't done it before, especially those of us that have our longer legs. So that's our whole circuit, right? So just like we talked about with the first routine, we have our 9 exercises. We have our 3 rounds. We go through. In between each round, we're deciding how much we need to rest, 3 minutes or less. In between each exercise, we're deciding how much we need to rest, right? The harder we push, control that rest variable, the harder it is, right? And to make sure that before we even get started, we get everything set up, we get everything organized, and we get a good warm-up in. After that, get after it and crush it. Go Lehigh.